So at that point, did you realize like, hey, this is the direction I'm going to go? I'm going to make a name for myself in the fitness world?
Well, there really wasn't much of a fitness world.
Right.
It was just like, hey, I have a passion for exercise. I have a passion. I was a personal trainer going through college a little bit as well at Gold's Gym here. I had I graduated. I did that show. My degree was in biology, psychology. I was looking at being a chiropractor. Okay. And it just kind of happened that, when I won this muscle and fitness male model search, kind of catapulted a couple things. Bodybuilding.com signed me to a contract. Optimum Nutrition signed me to a contract. It wasn't much. I probably was earning $1,000 a month. Mm-hmm. But with Optimum, I was like, hey, because I had just won these competitions and I eventually did the bodybuilding.com spokesmodel search and I won that. So I was their spokesperson. I was Optimum Nutrition. I was like, send me around the world. I want to see the world. I'm 20. I'm not married. I'm like, so I went, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, China. Awesome. It was a good 5 to 6 years of just brand building. And I didn't. So
you're 25, 26, 20, right in there.
Right in that. And I really did it for the next 7 years or even longer. But during that time, social media hit. Yep. So it was kind of a right place, right time. Because I remember shooting with photographers for magazines covers. These magazine covers would maybe pay $500 for a magazine cover. But it was kind of like, hey, in the fitness industry, if you could stack some magazine covers, that was clout. Yeah. Now it's followers. Back then it was like stack magazine covers. So I was always
Was it Facebook first?
It was Facebook, yeah. And so grew a Facebook, and it was so organic. I would go maybe 10 expos a year. We'd go to the Arnold. We'd go to the LA Fit Expo. We'd go to FIBO in Germany. We'd go to the Filex in Australia. And then we started doing Malaysia or China. So seeing the world was awesome, but it was literally stand in line for 10 hours, talk to people about their fitness goals, talk to people about, what they have going on. And a lot of those people would then, take a picture in that experience with them. They might not really know who you were at the time, but it was my goal was to really make an impact in that 2 minutes I had with them. And a lot of times they would hey, take a picture. They make that their profile picture. Yeah. Then their friends would follow.
Right.
Yeah. Be like, who's this that so-and-so's taking a picture and posting it? And so that's how I grew my following, really. That's awesome. It was about as organic as it gets. Yeah. And then, of course, Instagram comes around and, when you have a lot of Facebook followers, and it was kind of right in the heart of that. I was still competing. I was competing at Mr. Olympia contest and men's physique, and I was still traveling the globe. I was doing YouTube. And that was I think there was 2 other fitness YouTubers.
Wow.
There was Mike Chang, Six Pack Abs, and then Scott Herman. Those were the 2 guys.
So how did you see where social media was going back then? Or was it just kind of I'm just going to kind of go with the flow and see where this goes? I mean, did you were I got to get on this? And
no, there was never oh my gosh, this is going to be a massive thing.
Yeah, nobody saw that you're going to, that you could potentially make a ton of money.
No, it was never everyone was you would do it because you were a kid, and kids now that want to get on TikTok.
Right.
It's just because that's what everyone else is kind of doing. That's how you stay in touch with people. Again, it was fun for me to do social media. It just came naturally. It is weird how I think back and I'm there was never any a calculated move where I'm hey, I'm going to grow a ton of followers. Yeah. When I started YouTube, that was probably the first time that I was hey, I had a girl I was dating at the time. Her brother was massive on YouTube. He was an OG daily vlogger on YouTube. The Shaytards is what their name was. And he helped start Maker Studio, which was a YouTube. They own it was channels. They had 1,000 or 5,000 channels that they represented on YouTube. So they had direct access to actual YouTube, and they would get you higher ad revenue on YouTube and things like this. And I just saw this guy was making a killing.
Yeah.
He was working hard, but it was just, he was hanging out with his family all the time vlogging.
Yeah.
So I just started vlogging, these expos, and then I would do, workout videos and grew from there. Mm-hmm. But, again, looking back, there's a million things I would have done different, but it was a grind. It was hard, but it was fun at the time. It was part of what I loved doing. So it didn't feel like work.
Yeah. Because what a lot of people don't see is how much work you're putting in gym, nutrition, fitness, all those goals.
Not to mention just hopping on a plane, traveling 15 hours, standing in line for another 10 hours.
And then having to keep those habits like we were talking about.
Yeah. It's like if you stop working out, if you stop eating right, and that was one of the things that everywhere I would go, it was like their big expo of the year. It was like if I'd go to Australia, the Australian Optimum Nutrition team or whoever, it was like all the big Australian fitness people were there, bodybuilders and whatnot. And a lot of them would go party like crazy, like for 2 nights in a row, just go get drunk. But I was like, this is a job for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm waking up the next day. I want to make sure that I'm in line talking with people. So I just treated it very, very different.
Do you think that discipline, because obviously that's a definition of discipline. I've always said discipline is easy if you're disciplined, right? Yeah. Do you think that comes from your athletic background? Like, do you think you built that in football or previous, or was that something your dad I mean,
a little bit of both. A little bit of both, because I mean, we definitely had to be disciplined growing up. It was like, we didn't get to sleep in as kids. Like when you have to have a disciplined household when you have that many kids, kids up chores, go outside, do your stuff, be organized. We also had to get good grades. I wasn't the most scholastic in the family. But I think also that's what sports teach too. It's like, if you're not disciplined, if you're not showing up to practice, if you're not putting in the weight room time, right. Your teammates can't count on you. You're letting people down. But I think that ultimately that discipline is probably definitely, like, again, I'm like, now I just got to be disciplined and do things I love. Like, again, like I love working out. Yeah. It's not easy to eat right, but long-term goals definitely outweigh that.
When you travel, how do you keep on point with your diet?
Now it's different. Like I always tell there's a very, and I kind of liken it to probably, like golf, to go from a high handicap to a low handicap. Like, it's fairly easy to get single digits in golf. Not fairly easy, but a lot of people do it. And, over the course of a couple of years, like, you can get with the coach, practice, get good. But to go from like a 10 handicap to a scratch golfer, that's a whole different level of ball game. Like the amount of time and that's the same with body fat.
Sure.
It's like I can get fairly lean, watching what I eat, but if I want to get 3-4%, it's busting out my food prep scale, weighing out everything. Yeah. It's putting it into my Fitness Pal. It's saying no, like, hey, we're going out to a restaurant. It's like I'm not eating, or I'm going to get something super plain.
Yeah.
But again, for me, it was never like, I was never probably a massive food person. Growing up, I could kind of eat whatever I wanted because I was just so active. So it was never like, I obsessed about food. It was just food was kind of fuel. So, but
yeah, I remember Brandon told me early on, I was probably, 20 years old at the time. He goes, Jeff, just live to eat, don't eat to live. Yeah. Or vice versa. Eat to live, don't live to eat. Yep. I'm like, man, that's so good. And for me now, I'm like, whatever. It's just food.
And everyone has different, some people, just genetically, they love food more. Like, I think my wife could never count macros. Like, if I talk to her, if I try to get her, she wants nothing to do with it. She grew up as a gymnast, so she was always super active as well. But she's like, there's nothing worse to me than having to sit there and count macros. But to me, it's like, again, it's like a bank account. It's like if you don't know what's happening, if you don't know how many calories I have at the end of the day, you're gonna blow it all on some crap food that you don't even love.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing where people are trying to get fit, or whether it's their financial life or their like, if you know what's coming in, it's a lot easier to know what results you're going to get, right? 100%. If you know how much money you're making, it's easier to budget. If you know how many calories you're eating, it's a lot easier to figure out what the result is going to be, right?
It's really, you always get people that, again, sitting in a line at expos, you always get people, well, I have this, I work graveyards, or I'm like, at the end of the day, your body's basically a machine. Like, again, we're not that. People have, different hormones, genetics, yes, all of that kind of stuff. But for most people on the planet, if you eat at a deficit, you're going to lose weight. Yeah. Now, if you eat enough protein, you're going to maximize muscle. You're not going to have, you're not going to be sitting there losing a ton of muscle, because that's one of the things we see with, people crash dieting is like, hey, I'm just not going to eat. But I'm like, you're losing a crap ton of muscle in the process as well.
Right.
Yeah, and then it hurts their hormones, and then they wonder why they can't put on muscle.
That yo-yo dieting is going to wreck your metabolism. And so, and even from competing from all of those years, like, competing is, like running a marathon. Fitness for me started off as something that I just loved being healthy. Then it becomes an obsession. Yeah. Right. And you can become unhealthy. Like I went through the bodybuilding stage ready at, 3.8%, I think was the lowest I ever got. And then post work or post show, there was a lot of shows I'd win, but the next day I was like, just depressed. I was like, 'cause
sure.
that journey's over. That like you hit your goal, now what? And it's like, okay. And I tried to always reverse diet, but it's almost like you have to have another goal immediately. And it could be like, hey, I'm going to gain 10 pounds of muscle, or I'm going to work on my bench, my squat, it had to be a different goal other than just looks. Cause you hit your goal. You really can't get much leaner than, 3% some body fat. So
I think that's a great thing in business. We would always say, if you're going for a promotion, on your way to that promotion, when you're about 75, 80% of that goal, you need to reset a new goal that's bigger. Your beliefs there, you're getting there, and that way it keeps you driving, not just to it and then relax. Because a lot of people do that. They'll let up right as they hit a goal, versus if you've got another goal set, you'll run right through and go to that next goal.
Because when you get into law enforcement to serve and protect, but then you realize this machine, this money machine, and the quota hill thing, like I'm convinced that's one of the reasons why we have such a divide between the police and the public. Because if you have a white officer that's posted up in a neighborhood, let's say a ghetto, and they have a quota, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, the obvious.
Yep.
And so nobody talks about that. They just talk about the arrest. Why are they doing this? So in my opinion, police need to be more like firemen.
Yeah.
Like wait until you're called,
right,
instead of drumming up business.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, what I see and what I think is just very admirable is when you're in those type of situations where you truly, you fear God more than man. You're proving that, and that's part of what our podcast is about. I think that's where everything starts. If we all had that as a foundation, and we truly did fear God more than man, we would stand up for these things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to work out perfectly just because you did that. And I want you to continue with your story, because things didn't work out maybe the way we would think they should work out. The Lord maybe didn't bless you the way we would think he would bless you, but I'm sure he's blessed you in other ways that you're seeing now. Maybe we'll get to that, but I'd like you to just keep going with your story, because
you got to understand too. Like I come on and tell the highlights of the things that I've made a lot of stupid mistakes in my life, and I still continue to. So just know that, like, I'm always repenting, but I don't when I go against my conscience, that's the worst of me, right? When you betray yourself, when you betray your conscience, everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I don't like to do that. And so I believe that God, he puts us in these positions, and it's usually a position where you're going to lose something, right? Like when you see something and everyone has it, you've got to make a decision now. What are you going to do? And we're now in a time in 2023 where this war between good and evil, you got to pick a side.
Yep.
And I'm not talking Republican, Democrat. I'm talking about light versus darkness,
right and wrong,
good versus evil. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the fact is there is a light in the sand, or a line in the sand when it comes to right and wrong. There is.
Yeah.
You have to choose it at some point.
Yeah, and we have so many Christians right now in all denominations that think all you need to do is just be nice.
I know. I talk to people about this all the time. People forget that Jesus threw tables in the temple, that it wasn't like it was always just peaceful. At some point, confrontation exists, and peace isn't always the solution, especially when somebody else is pushing their ideologies and it's wrong.
Well, there's a lot of people that just don't understand the character of God. Like, the character of God is the reason. Why is God the king? Well, the reason why he's a king, because he defends his kingdom.
Yeah.
That war in heaven is never ending.
Yeah.
Right.
Light and darkness, that will always be.
Straight is the gate and narrow is the way. I know somebody's in. Lexi was just showing me last night. Actually, reading it was kind of firing it up. Somebody saying, "Are we the ones that are making it narrow?" I'm like, no. God's got his laws, right? And he allows us, because he loves us, to choose what we want to. We have our agency, right? And he's not going to force us to return to live back with him if we don't want to. He lets us end up where we're going to want to end up.
Be comfortable.
Yeah, which is awesome. Yeah. So it is narrow. It straight is the gate, narrow is the way. Anyway, I cut you off on what you're going to
No, it's fine. I have scripture. I'm a Latter-day Saint, right? And a lot of people disagree, but fine, it's cool. But in my scriptures that I believe, in the Doctrine and Covenants 88:32, I think it is, it says that, and they who remain shall also be quickened. Nevertheless, they shall return again to their own place to enjoy that which they are willing to receive, because they were not willing to enjoy that which they might have received. What that means is that we are going to go where we are comfortable going.
Yeah.
And if we do not know how to stand up against darkness, we will not be prepared for the kingdom that God resides in.
We wouldn't be comfortable there.
Not at all.
We wouldn't like to be there.
Because you don't know how to have these tough conversations.
No.
You don't know how to stand up to say somebody and say, I love you. I disagree with what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody messaged me the other day and was like, they have a gay child, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what would you do? I would tell them how much I love them. And I would tell them how much I believe that this is the order. This is the proper order of heaven. We all have problems. Mm-hmm. We all are struggling with something. Your struggle is no more difficult than my struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's not focus that is your identity, because you are a child of God. Mm-hmm. You don't identify of what we're sexually attracted to, right? Yep. So that's a conversation that people just don't want to have, because they think that love means to affirm.
Or accept.
Yeah, just, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's nice, but being nice and good are two different things.
It's just like your child gets addicted to drugs, so you go start buying it for him. It's no different,
Right, but see, but
I just don't understand how people don't see that. I mean, it's obvious until you're in the struggle, right? Until you're in that battle.
So the battle's truth, right? Mm-hmm. Love, light, and truth are all the same thing. But right now we're under attack, and so what we have to do is to stand up and say, no, not in our communities. This is not happening. God is not only a God of peace, but he's also a God of war. People don't know that. I pulled this scripture up, Exodus 15. The Lord is my strength and my song. He's become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him a habitation. My father's God, I will exalt him. Exodus 15:3. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his host hath he cast into the sea. His chosen captains are also drowned in the Red Sea. The depths have covered them. They sank into the bottom as a stone. Thy right hand, O Lord, hath dashed in pieces the enemy. Like, people don't understand. Yeah. Like, there comes a time, because people are like, why doesn't Jesus just come already? Right? Have you heard this?
Yeah.
Why doesn't he just come already and stop this? Mm-hmm. Oh, no. He's seeing what characters are down there. He's seeing who's prepared. The wheat and the tares are not fully developed yet, but it's close. Mm-hmm. So that's why I keep telling people, wake up. And after you wake up, you better take a stand. Because if we don't know how to fight against evil in this life, we will not be prepared for the kingdom of God. Period.
Yep.
Because the kingdom of God is liberty.
Right.
Gosh.
Yeah.
It's just.
Absolutely.
It's liberty. It's like you go around, like in our church, like we talk about scripture heroes, right? Mm-hmm. And for those of you that are listening that aren't members, there's a man named Captain Moroni in our scriptures. So if you don't believe it, okay, great. Just take it like a little fairy tale. There's a man named Captain Moroni. He goes around and he gathers for liberty. He gathers people. People come running for liberty. He's angry with the government. Well, the person that abridged the plates named Mormon, out of all the stories that he looked at, he said, if all men were like unto
Moroni,
Captain Moroni.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say church leaders, and that's not a dig on church leaders, but why didn't he say the prophet at the time? Why did he say this guy who's fighting for liberty, who's really angry, mm-hmm. who is making people vow for liberty? Like, it came to that point. You better choose it. Mm-hmm. So why was he saying if all men were like unto that guy? He didn't even have a church calling that we know about.
Right.
So what I'm trying to explain is, like, we are all supposed to be warriors for God, no matter what faith you're in, whatever faith you're in, even if you're not of a faith. If you're standing up for what is right and true, you're standing up for God.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You see these Canadian truckers?
Yeah.
How amazing that, dude, that was
awesome.
So inspiring.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I was like, that's how the kingdom's going to rise, is by people that are standing up for their God-given rights.
Yeah. True.
You know what I'm saying?
True.
This is how it's going to happen. It's like from all over the world, all these different, you know how you hear like the millennium is going to be filled with all these different faiths?
Yes.
People that don't yet know Christ?
Yes.
This is how it's going to happen.
Yep.
Because it's those that are standing up for their God-given rights. Because people don't understand that the Constitution doesn't give you your rights. That's not, people think, oh, that's what gives me my right. No. The Constitution is there to tell the politicians what they can and can't do. Your God-given rights are eternal. Those are already there. They are part of you. Mm-hmm. And so my whole thing is that if you hand over your God-given rights, the right to life, the right to pursue your happiness, the right to your stuff, your property, if you just hand those over in the name of safety, in the name of love, in the name of unity, the greater good.
Sure. Yep.
If you hand those over physically, guess where else you lose them? Spiritually.
Yep.
Where do you give a child responsibility to make decisions that are going to impact their life positively, which I think goes back to protecting our family and the things that we've built, right? Who are we handing them over to? And it's our job to raise great children that we can raise up and can honor what we've built by making what we've done better, right? Giving them a hand up in life. And I think, yes, sometimes, I mean, it's hard, right? I think what brought this up is a question someone asked is, all right, so should a child own a gun at 18 years old? Right? And if they shouldn't own a gun at 18 years old because they're not mature enough, then should we be giving them a weapon to drive, like a vehicle?
Sure,
right?
exactly.
And are they too young, or is it our job as parents to raise up children in an environment where we give them the freedom to make mistakes inside of a framework of expected responsibility, right? So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, I think exactly coming back to environment.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility as a parent to raise up a child in the way he should go. Right. And so it comes down to environment. It comes down to teaching. And there was a point in our own son's life, it was, I think, 7th grade, where he chose to homeschool. And so we chose a school that was a little bit more virtual attendance wise. There was teachers present on like Zoom teaching. And the same thing as cooking, right? You're having knives. You got to teach your kids how to chop onions or, cut meat. And that's the same thing with weapons, with guns, with anything like that. We're a house.
Or with a business where you can go provide for your family, right?
Or money.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. That's one of the things I told Noah before you get married. You should have a goal of saving $50,000 minimum.
Right.
And maybe he didn't reach that goal, but he was sure close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's again, it's the teaching from the parents, and whatever lifestyle you as a parent want to raise your children in, it's your responsibility to fester that environment, to cultivate
and protect that. I mean, even the internet today, right? We've got to be very careful about what they're exposed to there, which is a tricky thing to navigate today.
Yeah. We didn't let Noah have social media. If it was my choice, he wouldn't have had a cell phone till he was 16. But partnership, doesn't always work out that way.
The same way.
It's
but no social media, because again, I was going to be the one feeding what I wanted my son to grow up in, his belief system. And again, when they're adults, by all means, it's on you at that point when you move out and you have your own thought patterns and your own influence. But in my home, I'm the one responsible for my own son.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I think these are the same things we're talking about right now to raise great children, are a lot of the same things it takes to build a great business, right? Like environment and belief system and all this kind of stuff. Where'd you guys learn this stuff? I think a lot of people, and the reason I asked that question, I think a lot of people that are maybe just employees, unfortunately, don't get to be in an environment where they're taught these things. I think there are places they could go seek them out. Unfortunately, most people don't. But I think if everybody in the world could understand these things, like what is the environment in your home? What kind of belief system are you building up in your children? These kind of things, including ourselves, right? It's just important for us to be focused on social media. If we're going to be on there, we better use it as a good tool, not as a bad habit, like most people do, right? So where'd you guys learn a lot of this stuff? I mean, if somebody's listening and they go, you know what, I would love to start thinking that way and making decisions like they make decisions, where do they go?
Right. I think it's extremely important to make sure you have mentors in life. I will say this. I cried one day in the shower as I was listening to John Maxwell, and he was saying the same thing. You need mentors in life. And one of the next words out of his mouth, or next sentences out of his mouth, was, most of your mentors you will never meet in person. And I was kind of shocked because I want somebody tangible, somebody I can talk to and someone could pat me on the back when I'm having a bad day. But he said, you need to get it through books. You need to get it through videos. You need to get it through, other people in business that you may never shake their hands, but you have a constant flow of teaching or wisdom. So for me personally, our pastor has always said one thing. It's wise to learn from your own mistakes, but it's even wiser to learn from another man's mistakes. So what does that mean? Watch. If you like the way somebody comes out or their actions or their setup at their homes, follow those things. If you don't like it, then that's a red flag. Maybe you shouldn't do that. I've listened to Dr. Laura Schlesinger my whole life, pretty much. My mom listened to her when I was a kid. She's a talk radio show host. She's been on there, 40 years, and she's the wisest person I've ever listened to in my life. The book of Proverbs. I read it almost every single month. And so you have to be feeding yourself, but you have to reach out and say, I want to improve. I want to create this little haven for myself. Number one, my own mind, my marriage, my family, parenting, everything. But you have to be seeking. It's not going to just be happenstance that everything perfectly falls in your lap like a beautiful sunset. Right. You have to work for it.
Yeah. I think when you talk about building this haven, and that goes back to protecting it too, right? Because you've got to, if you have a garden, you've got to not only protect the garden, but you got to pull weeds. And I think in our lives and our business and our family, we've got to make sure that if we want certain things to happen, we've got to take certain actions, right? To make sure that the environment is fertile for what we're trying to grow in that environment, right? Correct. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I think too. I think, just obviously you've got a foundation. And I think, why are you here in St. George?
We're actually going up to a play.
Oh, you're going to play. I thought you were.
A con.
I thought you were going to a church activity tonight.
No,
you're not.
No, we're going to. We're taking our pastor. Our pastor's going.
Oh, you're okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And but obviously you have that foundation. You said you found Christ back in whenever that was, just
20 years old.
20. Okay. Yeah. And if everybody just had that as a foundation, all this stuff wouldn't be an issue, right?
Solves a lot of problems.
So many people are so caught up in seeking pleasure.
Yeah.
And when we seek pleasure, I was trying to remember what pleasure versus, I can't remember what it was, but I wish I could remember. It'll probably come to me. But if we're always seeking that, and we're not going to get anywhere in life, we've got to do what's right. And that's what brings the true joy,
Absolutely.
Well, one of the things, just to kind of close out on that, is it's okay to fall. If you fall.
Yep. Sure.
You have to get back up.
Yep.
And thank God mercies are new every single morning.
Well, that's for sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people, I actually, wrote this down earlier that you said you got to give yourself a shot. And I was going to come back to that because I think that a lot of people don't give themselves a shot because they're worried about falling down.
Yeah.
Why do you think people are worried about falling down, right? They're scared. They have fears that are programmed in them, in their environment. They have egos, whatever it may be. What are some tools you guys use to, because, we've known each other for a long time.
Yes.
And we've all been through the valleys and we've, been at the top together. And I've watched you guys overcome some incredible things with faith, always positive. Nobody ever knew what was happening. What are some things that allowed you guys to continue moving forward, even though when it didn't make sense to everybody else, right? Where maybe everybody else thought, oh man, I would never keep moving forward, or that's a hard challenge, or when most people would quit, you guys kept moving forward. What was it that allowed you guys to continue moving forward when it didn't make sense, when it was uncomfortable, or the odds were against you, or the situation was tough?
Yeah. Man, you know what? I always tell everybody, you got to have faith. You just got to have faith that you just keep going. It's all going to work out.
So what does that mean? What does faith mean?
You keep going. It's going to work for you.
Well, having hope.
Just keep going. Yeah. You're having the hope.
Expectation that the future is going to be better than now if I continue to doing the right things.
And if I say why, but why? Well, because I've seen so-and-so be in a worse situation and they kept going and they made it. So if I keep going, then I'm going to make it.
But what's the alternative?
Right.
Yeah.
Laying down and dying?
Right.
Yeah.
Giving up, punking out,
dying.
Yeah. The flashlight theory, right? You got to shine a flashlight. You can only see so far. You got to step further to have it shine further.
Yeah.
I think one of the saddest things is the pain of regret.
Yeah.
Right? If you never try, then you'll never know what could have been.
Right. Yeah, I've talked about that for a lot of
I
years.
know.
I think for me, that's probably a thing that pushes me, is knowing that at the end of my life, after it's all said and done, I don't want to look back wishing or regretting I didn't do something, and wishing I had the courage or the guts to just give it a shot, right?
And here's another thing is, we all have known each other for more than a decade. Can we each think of something that was so massive in one another's lives that was so detrimental or was such a failure? And really, no, I can't. I mean, memory, our pastor says, has no neutral ground, right? It is what you think of. And I think amazing things about you gentlemen and your wives and your families and your success. And I think the same thing about us. And we always think, as the month of production rolls to the next month, no one was worrying about who was 4th, 5th, or 6th, or 7th place, or, who didn't meet their income goals. You're worrying about yourself. So I think faith, number one, faith has been the trajectory of success. And number one, our walk with God, our marriage, our family, our business, coming out of trials and devastations. I'm not just going to lay down and die.
Right.
It's going to be better tomorrow. And if you give up now, you'll never know.